Cool. So looking again at this issue about showing a detailed status for the GitHub importer. But one of the things I've been thinking about is what happens when it's a little bit wider than GitHub importer, and also thinking about the components that exist in pajamas. Originally, we'd spoke about using a popover and having something like this, using badges to display the status, and then we can have some popover with some further details inside. But some discussions in the design system room on Slack indicated that popovers might not be suitable for this rich information, and there was a concern that they're only being designed to support a single string of information, and there's some problems with that. So I was thinking, okay, how could we simplify it rather than a bigger piece to expand the popover? What if there was a boring solution that involved just displaying things in the table, no progressive disclosure? So thought, okay, if we just list them all out, what does that look like? Okay, that's a bit unwieldy. Is there some way we can simplify it? Is the numbers important? Should they be revealed through a popover, or do we have a show and hide mechanism for it? And was thinking about lots of these different things. Okay, what if they're all just displayed rather than let's eliminate the show and hide? And I was thinking, oh, okay, what patterns is similar to this? What else is it? If we remove the labels, is that extent like too much information again? Can we simplify it further and have something like this? And it just reminded me so much of this sort of view, where we've got an import is a thing that's got a start and an end, but lots of steps in between. It transpires that these can actually all happen at the same time. They're not always bound to an order. And I was just wondering if conceptually pipelines end up being like, if there should be like a level of abstraction above this sort of view that says, oh, and then there's an A to a B with distinct steps. Here's how we can display that information. And that's the sort of descent into at an abstract level, our pipelines, this way of visualizing a pipeline and visualizing an import end up being the same thing, if that makes sense, because this comes pretty close to where it is. So that was my Friday.
Fun. What is really useful sort of for us to understand and judge like an appropriate approach would be having a better understanding of what the job to be done would be, and like any sort of user stories is associated with it. So do you know what the user story is, or the job to be done, and that should help us to sort of better prioritize whatever solution we come up with.
No, again, very good question. I could make a guess at what the user story is, but it hasn't been detailed as part of this work. My assumption was the user story is along the lines of as a user, when I'm importing from anywhere, in this case it's GitHub, I want to know a more detailed status of, I want to know, we don't care about detailed status, is if something hasn't, what is my import happening? And if it has not been a success, what bits have not gone well? which I think is what this partial success is really trying to do. Does that sound like a sensible assumption based on what you know about what a user story would be for this?
Sure, let's break that. I'm just trying to capture that. So when importing from GitHub, I want to know whether my import is happening, and if it hasn't, why, and if it hasn't, why it hasn't.
Yeah.
It hasn't, so that I can, so we have like a little bit of the context, we have a little bit of the action, and what's the sort of outcome that we want from this?
Yeah. I think the outcome would probably be know that I'm ready to start using my project that I've imported, either sharing that to a wider team so they can use it, or I myself use the new thing that's come across.
Okay, yeah, so like so that I can start using my project. So when importing from GitHub, I want to know whether my import is happening, and if it hasn't, why hasn't it? Why it hasn't? That's grammatically, that seems weird, but so that I can start using my project as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that lines up to what my assumption about the underlying user story would be when I picked up this.
Or if it hasn't. So I mean, from what it seems right there, there's like two aspects, right? There's the aspect where imports and it works well. And then basically the stuff that you've imported is all green checks, and you don't really, I'm assuming you don't really care all that much because you're like, it's imported. So I'm assuming it's all working. And then there's the partial import, where something hasn't worked properly, and then you need to dive into the details. So my assumption there would be users tend to only care about this stuff if it hasn't worked. Do you think that's a valid assumption, or what do you think about that?
I think it's a sensible assumption, but I think it's a relatively risky one at the same time, if that makes sense. I think for me, there's a lot of unknowns about it. But yeah, I think it's more important to know which bits have or haven't worked if it hasn't worked, so that you can go in and start to fix any problems that may have occurred. With the imports, like the import is happening, sometimes I think these can be long, or lots of projects are importing. So there might be a case of the sense of needing to know things are moving as well, because it can happen over a longer period of time.
So showing progress is like another aspect to that.
Yeah, it could well be.
Showing progress. So based on that user story of showing progress of your import, or notifying you if something's gone wrong with your import, can we go back to the solution here and sort of talk about like how that's sort of how your solution is sort of addressing that job to be done effectively compared to other potential solutions?
Yeah, sure. So I think happy path, if we just ignore all of these things, I think this happy path of just a status can hit the first point that we've written in the doc, that the import has happened and it's worked well. same for this. It doesn't show, but yeah, the bits where it lacks is showing progress. Have I got a view that's got it? So like this. If the view is just like this, or have I got one in progress? No. Yeah, there we go. Then I think it covers it. The what's gone wrong, you can't see on this, and which is why I think we're building it up to have some extra information. And I've lost where I was going with it.
So what jumps out to me here is like a pipeline. It's definitely doing that job of showing you that there's progression happening, and it's showing you that there's, steps in the sequence and so on.
Yeah.
What's missing here is there's no immediate indication of like what that step is apart from that tooltip. And whether you could show a little bit more of a hint around what that could be. So for example, could you show some icons with issues and MRs and stuff in there? Is that, or is it relevant? Are these steps, is just showing the steps and not much more detail below the steps, like a good approach? And then if something's gone wrong, then you show the detail. All questions that's
all questions I don't think I have the answers to either. I guess it's just struck me that it seems like there are a lot of similarities between the two spaces and the types of information they're trying to convey, even though, and it looks like we're at the point where it could diverge to two unique experiences that are trying to do a similar thing. I guess I wanted to check if other people see that there are similarities, and it might be worth in the future thinking a layer above those two and how we visualize and handle those. Or if I'm heading in if my long-term thinking is heading in a way off direction that we think that there's probably not much similarity between these two spaces. It's almost like there's two issues. There's, okay, what we're going to do now, and how can we get a good solution for now, but also what does a bigger future for this look like?
Yeah, so holding the vision and the MVC in tandem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good question. I mean, I can definitely see conceptually very similar things. A pipeline is a set of jobs that run sequentially over a specific period of time, and you want to understand if something's gone wrong with that pipeline. From my experience with pipelines, although I'm not a proper developer or anything, typically I don't look into them unless they've gone wrong. And the pipeline experience is quite nice for that, because basically if they work well, you just see a green tick and you're like, okay, that's worked. I don't need to worry about anything else. If they go wrong, you get like an annoying email message saying, look at this, here's an error message, this is where it's gone wrong, all that sort of stuff. So I suppose, experience wise, if you want to align it more similarly with pipelines, it may also be worth investigating not just that little component thing, but like how pipelines potentially get you to take action as well.
Yeah.
Again, this is me meandering, so I don't know how relevant it is.
I think it's super relevant, but I'm aware that I am also meandering around this, and I guess thinking out loud as I'm coming across these things. It's just not a super structured conversation or super structured proposal that I'm asking for feedback on.
Yeah, that's fine. I suppose there's a lot of assumptions here. A good exercise to do is to list out all the potential assumptions that you have about the problem space. And then think if there's some way to quickly test those. Doesn't need to be like a full-blown user research project, anything like that. But yeah, is there a way that you can test some of those riskiest assumptions that you've listed out in order to inform your design here?
Yeah, I think so. I think that sounds like a great idea. Thank you. Do we think any of the different things that we've seen? I'll pop a link in the chat in case anyone wanted to have a nosy around. Did any of them stand out as this seems like a really good good angle to start looking at for MVC, considering the original plan of popovers looks like it's not going to be suitable? Or I guess as a follow-on question that we maybe answer separately is what happens when how do we break out of pajamas, if at all, and what does that look like, and when is it okay, when is it not okay?
I don't think in this situation you'll need to use anything other than components.
Yeah,
I think you'll be able, like with MVCs, I think it's always a good thing to just start with components, because it just makes implementation all easier as well.
Yeah.
So I think there'll be a couple of components that you need to use here, but you can also work with developers to figure out the feasibility. Another approach here would potentially be using a table combined with a accordion component to give you a little bit more progressive disclosure. You could have it pretty much in the same format as this this table you have here, but just with an accordion.
Yeah. The accordion. Are either of you super familiar with accordions?
Familiar enough, yeah.
Are the titles always styled like this, or have you seen any other examples? I guess it doesn't need to in this instance. If we still had a badge and then it's just like some sort of label that says, hey, there's some stuff going on.
Yeah,
it's not always more in there.
It's not always styled in blue. Basically just using the chevron in front is typically the way to go.
Sure.
That may be an idea, but for this, as you say, there may be multiple projects that are being imported. If there's a bulk number of multiple projects happening, a table layout is always a nice way to go. And finding some way to have that balance between browse the progress of that versus dive into the detail when something goes wrong is probably a nice balance.
Super helpful. Thanks for talking this through with me.
Is there anything that's sort of is there anything that you feel sort of stuck on? Any other sort of questions that you have about it?
Not right now. I'm sure as soon as I start asking questions, listing assumptions, and checking those assumptions, that stuff will come up. But right now, I don't think so. I think this has been really helpful to talk it through. I think it's been really helpful to hear that others see that there might be some similarities that we could explore in the future about the experiences around these sorts of things. But I'm also aware that pipelines in our product has had a lot of investment, and there's a lot of equity built up in the language of that part of the product and the experience of it, which may make abstracting it out across different areas harder.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of like great design focus on pipelines. So for an MVC, it may not be completely feasible to be able to replicate a similar experience in the product. So I think you're on the right track with regards to boring solutions and so on. But yeah, give me a ping on the issue if you need anything else reviewing. And yeah, I'd be interested to see that list of assumptions and stuff as well.
No, that's great. Thank you, Nick.
No probs.